All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Math Lesson 28. Today we're all about measuring time and elapsed time. And we already took a first little dip in that pond if you did Math After Test 1 in Mr. Hines' room, right? So let's start off pretty basic here, and it's going to tell us that we measure time by the movement of the Earth. And a day is the amount of time it takes the Earth to spin on its axis. That amount of time is 24 hours. And what they mean by spin on the axis is just rotate one whole time all the way around. That's spinning on its axis. That's 24 hours in one whole day. If you need to go back at this information, it's on page 171 of your book. So some more information coming at you that's also reiterated on page 171. So each day has 24 hours. Each hour has 60 minutes. Each minute has 60 seconds. And they're going to give you this information and expect you to use it for things like how many seconds are in 2 hours. Well, they want the answer in seconds. This is kind of the old number of groups times the number in each group, because you got 60 groups of 60. So you're going to have to start off, if you want an answer in seconds, you're going to have to start multiplying seconds times minutes, the number of groups times the number in each group, right? Let's use what we learned in mental math. Instead of trying to figure out 60 times 60, what's 6 times 6? Okay, that's 36, right? How many total zeros? We actually never got to this step. We were only multiplying by 1 zero. What do you think's going to happen if we multiply by 2 zeros? It would be 3,600, because if we got 2 zeros in the problem, we need 2 zeros in our answer. So there's 3,600 seconds in each hour. But we have one more piece to figure out here, because they want to know in 2 hours. So we have to go and finally multiply that by 2. 3,600 times 2. What's 36 times 2? Can you do that one in your head? 36 times 2 is 72. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. Now, if you got really confused, I didn't run a traditional multiplication algorithm. Feel free to go 2 times 0, 2 times 0, 6 times 2 is 12, write down the 2, carry the 1, and 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 more, you still end up with the same answer. So a little bit more information, this time coming at us from page 172. The time it takes the Earth to travel all the way around the sun is 1 whole year. And the trouble is, it actually, if you measure it perfectly, it really takes the Earth 364 and 1/4 days. So to make up that time into a whole number, we have 3 what they call common years. A common year will have 365 days. We have 3 common years in a row, and then 1 year called a leap year. And when it's a leap year, there are 366 days in a year. 3 of them in a row have 365. Then the 4th leap year has 366. Even more from page 172. This lesson is chock block full of information. A year is divided into 12 months. February is the shortest. It has 28 days during common years and 29 days in a leap year. That's how they make that jump from 365 to 366 days in a year. They tack on one extra day in February every 4 years. 4 other months each have 30 days, and the other 7 months each have 31 days. A decade is a period of 10 years based on the Latin and Greek prefix deca. Deca means 10. A century is based on 100 years based on the prefix centi. And I always keep track of this because there's 100 cents in a dollar, right? And the last piece of information on page 172, a millennium is a period of 1,000 years, also based on the root word milli. Milli is 1,000. If you think of a million, that's really 1,000 thousands because there's 6 zeros on it, right? Now, this is a lot of important information, and they're going to ask you this over and over, day in, day out. I don't expect 5th graders to have this all memorized after watching this video once. You know what I do expect 5th graders to be able to do? Turn to page 172 of your book when you need to retrieve this information. If you don't know, it's listed in your glossary, and it's also listed on page 172. You can always go back and use your book. So they might ask us some questions like this. 4 centuries is how many years? This is the old number of groups times the number in each group. But the problem is, in order to do that, you got to remember how many is in a century. This is 4 groups with 100 years in each group. So 4 centuries is 400 years, right? Not too tough. Number of groups times the number in each group. We learned that. Let's try this one. 3 decades is how many years? Number of groups is 3 times the number in each group. Do you remember how many years are in a decade? That was 10. So 3 decades, hey, that's got to be 30 years, right? That's not too tough. But you got to remember what these words mean, or you got to know where to go and find them. So how many decades are in a century? Well, we learned on that other page there's 10 years in a decade, and they want to know how many tens are in a century, which means 100. So you got to think about it. If I asked you, how many tens are in 100? Well, we count by tens in mental math, and we should be able to figure out that there's 10 tens in 100. 10 decades make up a century. Let's try one down here. How many centuries are in 2 millenniums? Okay, let's figure this one out. Centuries are groups of 100 years, correct? So you got to think how many hundreds are in 2 millenniums, 2 thousands. So I don't want to leave it even like this. I'm going to make it even easier for us. 2 groups of 1,000, hey, that's 2,000. So I got to think how many hundreds are in 2,000. We can count up. Hopefully you do. And you're going to find that there's 20 hundreds in 2,000, right? Are you with me so far? I'm telling you right now, if any of that was confusing to you, you better hit rewind and check it out again. Let's try this one. Moving on to calendars now. Calendars are pretty easy. They always tell you the data up on top. This is from calendar year 2014, and we're discussing the month of October. And they always abbreviate up here. Hopefully you know that this means Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? And then it's arranged in a chart that's pretty easy to use. They might ask you questions like this. According to the calendar, October 31st, otherwise known as Halloween, is what day of the week this year? Well, here's the 31st, so what day of the week is it? It rolls up on what day? A Friday. Woohoo, we don't even have to go to school that day, do we? So that's going to be a pretty good Halloween. It is a Friday. Let's try this one down here. What is the date of the third Monday in October? So let's go over here. Here's where our Mondays are, right? Because it's October. The 6th is the first Monday. The 13th is the second Monday. The 20th is the third Monday in October. So they want to know what's the date. And I know I write it up on my board this way, but I want everybody to actually write the real date. So you have October. October, what did we say? October 20th, 2014. I don't want them abbreviated because that's an easy way to get things confused. To start off with, we're going to write out the entire date. October 20th, 2014. All right, check this out. Time to start thinking like a clock. And time problems are a little bit tricky, especially when you start discussing elapsed time, because a lot of times you can't just stack the numbers on top of each other and subtract, because there's only 60 minutes in an hour. And our number system is based on hundreds. So you can't always just stack the numbers on top of each other and subtract. That's the number one problem I see with kids when they're doing elapsed time. You have to think like a clock, and you want to break it down minutes to hours and then tack on the extra hours. That's the best way. So I'm going to start with something I hope is review. 12 a.m. is called midnight. 12 p.m. is called noon. Okay? Not too tough, and if you needed to go back and find that, it's on page 173. So here they're talking about how a quarter hour is 15 minutes. And we've already had our fractions, right? So we kind of talked about quarters and those fraction pieces we drew. That's why they call 15 minutes a quarter of an hour. If you drew a picture on it like that, that's a quarter of an hour. So if they say a quarter after 2, and since it's after 2, well, your hour you start out as 2, and then move it down a quarter hour, and truly, that is 2:15, isn't it? Are you with me so far? If not, you better hit rewind. So we already know a quarter hour is 15 minutes, but check out this difference. If they said a quarter to 3, in a quarter hour, in 15 minutes, it's gonna be 3 o'clock. But it's not 3 o'clock yet. This messes up some fifth graders. They see 3 and they want to write the number 3 for the hours. It's a quarter until 3 or a quarter to 3. So your hour is 2. What is the minutes? Well, if you count them up, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. A quarter to 3 is 2:45. You got to start thinking like a clock. Okay, we might run into some like this. Write the time that is 7 minutes after 8 in the morning. Well, right now it's 8 o'clock in the morning. But if I started going 7 minutes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, what time is it? Pretty easy. It's time to write down the answer. It is 8:07. But here's the one part kids sometimes will mess up on. You're right. 8:07 wasn't tough. AM or PM. It's in the morning before noon. Noon is where PM starts. So it's 8:07 a.m. Make sure you label your time answers AM or PM, please. Let's try this one. Write the time that's 8:45 in the evening. So is it 9 o'clock yet? In a quarter of an hour, it will be 9 o'clock. But it's not 9 o'clock yet. So if it's not 9, it's got to be 8. When it moves this quarter of an hour, it will be 9 o'clock. So what is it now? It's 8, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. It is 8:45, and wait for it. Is it AM or PM? Where did you catch your clue there? Evening. Evening is night, so it's 8:45 p.m., right? Are you with me so far? If not, hit rewind. There's lots to go over this morning. Write the time that's 30 minutes after midnight. Now, midnight is where AM starts. Everybody thinks that midnight is the deepest part of night. Midnight is where AM starts. So, the rest of it's pretty easy. 30 minutes after midnight. Well, I can almost do that in my head, but we'll humor you. We'll go 30 clicks on the cool clock here. What is it? It is 12:30, but people always get confused thinking midnight is night. No, PM starts at noon. This is 12:30 a.m. Technically, sounds like it's morning, but man, most of us are asleep or not even asleep from the day before yet at 12:30 a.m. Write the time 20 minutes before noon. So is it 12 o'clock yet if it's 20 minutes before? No, it is not. What is our hour? Our hour is 11 since it's before noon. There's where the other hand would be. Here's 20 minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20 before noon. So it's 11 what? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. It's 11:40. Is it AM or PM if it's before noon? Noon is where PM starts. It's still before that. This is an AM tag. Take a look at this guy. It's morning. What time's shown on the clock? Well, the hour is 7, right? 7 what? 7, 5, 10. Not too tough. If it's morning, that means it's 7:10 a.m. If it's earlier, if you had to go 2 hours earlier, that would make it 5:10 a.m. is 2 hours earlier. Not too tough if you think like a clock. What time is it 5 hours later? So let's get back to 7:10 and now think what's 5 hours later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 12:10. 7 plus 5 more is 12. The minutes hadn't changed, but here's the tricky part. Now that it's 12:10, is it AM or PM? Once you cross 12 o'clock, you got to change your tags at the end. So this switched over into 12:10 PM because noon is where PM starts. Check out this one on elapsed time. The movie started at 3:15 p.m. and ended at 5 p.m. How long was the movie? And folks, I'm here to tell you, you cannot stack these numbers up and subtract them and get the right time because you'll end up with 2:85. 2 hours and 85 minutes? You ever heard of that? So my advice, first of all, I would count from 3:15 to the next available whole hour. From 3:15 to 4 p.m., hey, that's 45 minutes. And then count from 4 p.m. to 5. Hey, that's 1 hour. Then put them together, and what do you have? Not bippity boppity boo. You have 1 hour and 45 minutes. 1 hour and 45 minutes. And for Miss Hofer's class, who may or may not be watching this video, I don't know if she wants you to abbreviate or write the word out entirely. Okay? Check out this one. School starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 3:45 p.m. How long are you in school each day? Well, first of all, I would count the hours from 8 a.m. just to 3 p.m., not to 3:45. Okay? How many hours are there from 8 to 3? Well, hopefully we can start counting. Well, hopefully we can start counting, correct? So we're at 8. Well, hopefully we can start counting, correct? Because we are counting from 8 to 3 p.m. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 hours counted so far, right? Now let's go ahead and count the minutes from 3 p.m. to 3:45. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. There are 7 hours and 45 minutes. And that is the end. I'm thinking you're definitely going to want your book, a scratch piece of paper, probably not so much a need for a multiplication chart, but you're definitely going to want your book for this Socrative quiz. Good luck.